I really didn't pay that much attention to politics before I joined the union. I just sort of figured politicians, they're pretty much all the same. But as an apprentice, I began paying more attention, and as a journeyman, I'm very concerned. I'm worried for my future, my union's future, and the future of the Kentucky labor movement.
Anti-union politicians won a majority in the state Senate 16 years ago. Over that time, they have consolidated their power and tightened their grip on control of the state Senate. Every year, they've proposed and passed legislation repealing our prevailing wage laws and making Kentucky a right-to-work for less state. The only thing that has stopped them is our Friends of Labor in the Democratic-controlled House.
If our Friends of Labor lose control of the State House in November, Kentucky's prevailing wage laws will be repealed, and we will become a right-to-work-for-less state before the month of January is out. That's not an idle threat. It's a promise that has been made by our current governor and the anti-union leaders trying to win control of the State House. And what should scare every plumber and pipe fitter even more is the fact that if anti-union politicians get control of the State House of Representatives, not only will they pass these anti-union measures, we will not be able to undo them for at least a generation, for decades. And that's no exaggeration. Here's why.
If the union-busting forces win control of the State House, they will pass, and Governor Bevin has vowed to sign all of these anti-union bills into law. Even if our friends in labor came back and won control of the State House in the next election, 2018, and wanted to undo or reverse these anti-union measures, they couldn't, because for any legislation to become law, it must also pass the state Senate, and with the overwhelming majority of anti-union members controlling the state Senate, there is absolutely no chance of that ever happening in my lifetime. We cannot afford to sit on the sidelines this election. Control of the State House is at stake, and with it, our union.
As your UA International Rep, I work for you, representing your interest at the national level. And while the presidential campaign has captured the public's attention, it is your local elections for state representative in Kentucky that is going to have the most direct and lasting impact on you, your wages, and your job. I've seen what happens firsthand when our opponents gain control of the state's legislature and the governor's office. In recent years, it's happened over and over again. Indiana, Wisconsin, even in West Virginia. In each of these states, as soon as our opponents won control, they immediately passed right-to-work-for-less legislation and repealed their state's prevailing wage laws. As a result, our members in those states have taken a hit in the form of fewer jobs and lower wages.
There is a reason why Kentucky is the only state below the Mason-Dixon line in which prevailing wage laws and the freedom to bargain collectively still prevail. It is because we've elected Friends of Labor to the State House.
There's a reason why we say local elections are most important. Because it's true. For example, the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 502 are helping build the new Albany Hotel in downtown Louisville, a 30-story structure that will create over 700 jobs with nearly 100 members of Local 502 projected to work on this project. What makes this project stand out is the fact that it is funded by private investment. The Albany Hotel project is paying prevailing wage not because of some presidential policy or congressional action, but because of many local elected officials are Friends of Labor. If our Friends of Labor lose control of the State House of Representatives this fall, local ordinance like the one used to make the Albany Hotel project possible will be the thing of the past.
Our nation's attention has naturally been focused on the presidential election. But for members of the Kentucky pipe trades and their families, for all members of Kentucky's organized labor movement, it is your local election for state representative this fall that is probably one of the most important elections in my lifetime. It is what we do locally that has the greatest impact on safety, jobs, wages, and productivity. Policies on the local and state level directly impact your wages, benefits, and working conditions. And these policies are largely determined by Kentucky's General Assembly, by your local state representatives and senators.
As with everything about our great nation, the rights and freedoms enjoyed by one generation were preserved and built upon by the work and sacrifice of previous generations. As a young apprentice 50 years ago, I was instilled by the old-timers that we have a duty to the next generation to pass on to them the same freedoms and rights that benefited me. The right to bargain collectively, safe working conditions, and a fair wage on which we could provide for our families and live out our retirement years in dignity. During this important election year, let us remind ourselves of all that unites us as brothers and sisters in the labor movement and recommit ourselves to the same common cause for which our founders risked their lives. And let us not forget the next generation of plumbers and pipe fitters that are counting on us to preserve and protect the same rights and freedoms that my generation and yours have enjoyed. I am personally urging, no, I'm begging each of you to join me in supporting and working to elect a friend of labor in your local race for state representative. Thank you, brothers and sisters. UA all the way.
I've seen presidents come and go, from Nixon to Reagan to Clinton and Bush. None have had any impact on whether Kentucky was an open shop or prevailing wage state. It's our local state representative who makes that decision. So don't lose focus of what is important this November. Take the time to educate yourself about candidates running for state representative in your community. Find out who is a friend of labor, and then do something to help that candidate get elected.
The stakes for you and your brothers and sisters in the labor movement have never been higher. What you do between now and November 8th can make a difference. Talk to your coworkers, family, friends. Volunteer for the candidate in your local race for state representative who is a friend of labor, knocking on doors and making phone calls. And please go out and vote. Your future and the hopes of organized labor everywhere are riding on your shoulders and the outcome of the State House races in Kentucky this fall.
Here in Louisville, you see UA members touching every corner of political life, of government life, and everyday civic involvement. Your direct involvement at the local level helps make the city of Louisville and our Commonwealth of Kentucky stronger. While the presidential election is important, your future is going to be determined at the local level this fall. So get involved in your local state representative's race. Your efforts, your vote can make a huge difference, not only for you and your family, your job and wages, but for Kentucky families and local communities all across our Commonwealth. Every vote in our great country counts the same. Get out and vote on November the 8th.